I don't regret nothing I've done, to be honest. I mean, some people kind of might think of it like, wow, that's kind of messed up, you know, that I don't. But if you really think about it, it's made me into who I am today. You know, it's made me into a strong man. It's made me today. Today I'm responsible. Today I am reliable. Today, you know, like people can actually depend on me. People can actually trust me. Even though I'm a convict, you know, people can actually trust me. There's people that have given me their house keys. You know, there's people out there that are normal, that never even known that I lived in that lifestyle, and they trust me. You know, and because of the lifestyle that I lived, I became this man that I am today. So I can't regret it.
I really was attracted to the criminal lifestyle and drugs and alcohol and criming because it made me feel like other kids and took away that feeling of feeling less than and the insecurities that kids have. And I found an escape in it. It progressed from stealing Coke bottles at 6, 7 years old to get quarters for pinball so I could be like the other kids, and ended up at 20 committing homicide. Not only for acceptance from my peers, but because I didn't have an identity of my own self to walk away. I'm 48 this past Thursday, and I've probably been out a period of maybe 2 years put together since I was 13 years old.
I was abandoned when I was 4 years old. The guy that found me, he raised me in a dope house, and he was from a gang. So to me, the lifestyle that I lived was normal because that's where I came from. That's how I grew up. And because of the lifestyle that I lived, you know, and because of the things that I was doing, it caught up to me, you know. And what happened was that instead of me paying for it, they paid for it, and basically they paid for it with their life. And that was a very traumatic life change for me, because after that I had no reason to live anymore. Like, I had no reason to keep going, you know. I didn't have that motivation anymore. So I turned to drugs, like the hardcore stuff, like crystal meth, vodka, you know, and even more gang banging. Like, I left my neighborhood, but I went to go live in enemies' territory, like right in front of them, because I wanted to die. You know, so I started doing things, you know, so they can notice me. You know, but for some reason, just bullets would never penetrate. For some reason, they always went all around me. You know, the first time I went to prison was when I was 22, and it was for possession of sales. And I did 13 months. And after 13 months, like, you know, like most prisons do, they gave me my $200 gate money, and they told me, you're on your own. You know, I had nowhere to go. I had $200 in my pocket. You know, I was waiting to get out because I knew I was going to go back out and use. So that's what I did. I went on the run for another 9 months. And it was during those 9 months that I realized that I wasn't going to die. You know, that I was just going to keep living.
Interestingly enough, my first crime or my first high was not drugs and alcohol, but it was when I stole those quarters, because up to that point in my life, I always felt less than the other kids because I didn't have a father and my mom couldn't afford to give me money or the things that other kids have. So we used to hang out at the pinball down at Greyhound bus station. They had some pinball machines, and we played pinball, and I would mooch quarters off of all my friends because I didn't have it. But it really, really fed my insecurities. And so one day on the way home from school, I see these Coke bottles in the neighbor's yard down the street. And I'm not thinking I'm stealing, I'm just getting them Coke bottles to go get quarters to play pinball. And so the feeling that I got when I had those quarters first in my pocket was the greatest high a kid with my inner emotional deficit could ever have. I mean, I felt like normal. But the problem was that as I ran down to the bus station to get with my friends and giving them quarters now, because I had money. And just like any substance, within about a half hour, those quarters were gone. And now what do? That feeling went with those quarters. Wow. Just like if I had gotten high, you know, I'm right back to that kid that don't have any quarters anymore. And now I want that feeling back. And so I ended up shoplifting and stealing out of mom's purse. And, if I didn't have quarters, I know I could go get that new baseball mitt that none of the kids had that they all wanted, or that football. I knew how to shoplift or steal. And so I started to really find my identity in those kind of things. I understood addiction from a drug or alcohol perspective or aspect, where you obsess on the substance and then you use it and then you repeat it and it gets worse. It's like the cycle of addiction. But when I was in this meeting, they were talking about addiction in a different format that I didn't understand, and I kept arguing that, drugs and alcohol was my problem. Although I'm in prison for murder and that I was a thief my whole life, drugs and alcohol was my problem. And one kid out of San Jose, Joe M., he was about 19 at the time. He looked over and he goes, my thing wasn't drugs or alcohol. It was the neighborhood. He said, just like you would think about drugs or alcohol, I would think about my neighborhood and my homeboys and my homegirls. When I wasn't there, that's what I would obsess on. And if I was away from there, something was wrong.
When it comes to when it comes to feelings and all that and reforming, a lot of us, we start feeling things that we don't know what they are. Like, I've never known what feelings really were, like all I've ever known was hate. Like that's all I knew. Rage, anger, like that's all I knew. But I didn't even know what they actually were. You know what I mean? Like, I knew, I felt it, but I didn't know what they were. So when I got into recovery and I started feeling other things, like the pain, the shame, all these other things, that I started feeling, I didn't know what they were. Like, the first thing we want to do is we want to run. We're runners. We run. We've never realized this. Like a lot of us never realized that we were running. The way we looked at it is like the only people we run from is bullets and cops. So when you're telling us, that we're runners, that we're running from our feelings, it's like okay, like what the hell, So when we start feeling these things, it's like we having somebody there that guide us through it, kind of basically hold us up,
I resented my sponsor, Richard, for the first 3 years that he worked with me because he was my greatest friend, but he was my broken character's worst enemy. He wouldn't let me play or hide from the truth of what was going on within me, and he always, any opportunity he got, he would allow that to be exposed and put it on the forefront. And he did that so that I would identify it and begin to work on it and change. The 4-step identifies a lot of stuff that we've done wrong and the resentments we hold. And it's very important to pay attention to the resentments because most of our emotions are founded in those ill feelings and stuff like that. But in the 5th step, when your sponsor's listening to you, he's not so concerned about the property crimes, the homicides, whatever your things were that you did wrong in life. He's trying to see behind that to what you were asking, those emotional wounds that are left unhealed. Because I think that for most addicts in recovery, those are the issues that once they're resolved, the desire to go back to a substance isn't as strong because you don't have to run from them anymore.
I remember the first time I cried, man. It was at a freaking movie theater watching some, I don't even remember what movie it was. And I'm watching this movie, man, and some sad stuff's happening there, and all of a sudden I'm starting to feel all freaking weird, and a freaking tears coming down my eye, and I'm like trying to hide it, because I'm crying over a freaking movie here, what I mean? It's like, how ridiculous can that be, and the thing about it is that you know, when I go somewhere and I talk about this, like, people can relate to that. They laugh about it because they relate to that. They remember how it felt when they first cried, you know, and sometimes it's over something silly.
I don't believe closure exists. That's from experience. Closure is a word where it means the door is closed and it's final. And I don't think that in any criminal action or painful experience that's ever the case. For instance, Miss Ellis, I can never bring Matthew back from the grave. And, you know, I put him ahead of myself a lot. That's an emotional place because I took something very valuable that I can never replace. And I took it from not only him, but from his family and from his son Brandon, his wife Tina, his mother, Miss Ellis, and all his siblings. To say that they can just forget would be foolhardy. And I know that because even as Miss Ellis in the parole board hearings has forgiven me for what I've done, it's been a journey of understanding why I did that. As far as closure goes, I think the only closure they really get is a daily, I don't know, understanding that I'm living my life decently today with respect to them for what I took from them, but they'll never forget what I took from them. For everyone that does change, and this is one of our CGA logos, for every criminal or gang member that doesn't commit a crime, it spares thousands of victims. And I think that that's why it's so important, not just for the criminal or gang member to come into recovery, but for the community to support what the program represents and does. Because if you change, I probably in my life have done 1,000 burglaries. I've probably sold, I don't even know how many drugs to different people. And each one of those people has a family. Each one of those business owners or homeowners has a family that will never be the same. And if somebody had chosen, or if I had come to a place with somebody that understood and actually understood what was wrong, imagine how many people would have been spared had I gotten the help that I needed. But it's not going to be easy, because for every alcoholic sitting in an AA room, there's 1,000 out there drinking in a bar or their home right now. So I don't think of CGA as a cure-all. I just think of it as an option for many people to change their lives and live better and decent. That's realistic.